Hi everyone! Welcome to the Cat Scratch Library's Review Board, a convenient place where you can get information on any books you'd like to read. My name is Athella Novella, and I'm the librarian responsible for keeping you up to date on new and popular titles with some very opinionated reviews. As for today's series, I am not exaggerating when I tell you this is the best piece of fiction I have ever read. I was worried about starting it since it doesn't have an anime, although an anime is coming, and I knew basically nothing about it. I tend to be picky when it comes to purchasing physical copies of books because I don't like wasting my money, and I am so glad that I managed to blow through the entire series and pick it up despite all that. So, let's go ahead and get started. For today, I'm going to be doing a manga review of Witch Hat Atelier, illustrated by Kamome Shirahama. So, a little bit of background on the series first. Witch Hat Atelier released in 2017 in January 23rd in Japan and got its first English release 2 years later in 2019 on April 9th. So it hasn't been around for that long, but it's not exactly like new either. And this series has seen a tremendous amount of success since the release of Volume 1. It has either been nominated for or won a ton of different awards and continues to be nominated today since the series is not done. It's also reached 2.5 million copies sold worldwide as of April 2022, and quite frankly, I love this series so freaking much that I would individually go out and buy 2.5 million more. So it is definitely worth the money just based on all that information alone. For those of you who have never heard of it before, Witch Hat Atelier is about a little girl named Coco who's somewhere around 12 to 13 years old, and she lives in a world with magic and witches. And in this world, it's known that only witches are capable of using magic, so the people are convinced that you have to be born a witch in order to learn magic. Unfortunately for Coco, she is absolutely infatuated with magic and with the idea of becoming a witch, and there is nothing she wants to do more than learn magic. But because of how the world works, she can't. One day, she meets a very hot witch named Kifri, and he takes an interest in Coco and her work as a junior seamstress under her mother. Kifri stays in the area for a little bit while Coco and her mother fix some of his clothes, and then later, Coco is able to see Kifri do some magic and learns that magic comes from magic circles. She is reminded of an old magical picture book that she got from a pretty sussy witch in an alleyway a few years ago and tries to replicate what she saw Kifri do, and Coco is, unsurprisingly, successful, and she learns the secret that anybody can use magic, not just witches. However, the magic in the book is forbidden magic, and Coco basically ends up fucking everything up and turns her entire family, her whole house, and the immediate surrounding area to stone with absolutely no way to reverse it. The only reason Coco is even saved in the first place is because Kifri, who was still in the area, gets suspicious of some things that Coco told him and books it, hauls ass back to her house in time to save her from the crazy spell. And he scolds her, and then, after scolding her and giving her an earful, he takes her back to his atelier, which is basically just a little cottage in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, basically, and she learns how to be a witch, along with 3 other apprentices of Kifri, who were all Coco's same age. From there, the story takes off as Coco learns about the witch world in order to return her family to normal. She discovers that witches made regular people forget the truth, actually, about magic, in order to protect the world from devastation, war, greed, and basically general corruption. An organization of witches called the Brimmed Caps seeks to demolish witch laws and practice any magic they desire, because any magic that alters the human body or any other extreme spells are banned, and they want to use Coco to do it and to make all magic legal again. So, Coco learns how to be a witch, has a ton of conflict with the Brimmed Caps, and she has to resist all this temptation between evils of harmful magic, but also grow enough so that she can save her family in a morally justified way. And it's a pretty simple story arc, but what is done with it goes so far beyond my expectations, and it is so well done. So, let's go ahead and talk about the plot more in depth with our first point. Let's go ahead and start with what I did not like about the story. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot that I'm really displeased with. If I had to pick something, it would probably be my personal opinions on how the characters act. Because of the nature of the story, a very big theme of it is this idea of what is truly right and wrong, and whether or not hand-holding is really protecting everyone. Because of that, basically every single character in this story is morally gray, and every single main character makes morally gray decisions. And these decisions, I hate them. I hate them so much. They bother me to no end, and I hate reading about them because they, they're not always the right decisions, so they cause problems and it frustrates me. But they're supposed to be frustrating, and they're kind of, some of them are supposed to make you kind of mad, so I can't really get mad about them being in the story. As for what I did like, on the other hand, where do I begin? The story is literally everything I have ever wanted in a fantasy series. I am not kidding. There is very little romance. There is tons of magic and world building. The whole thing is about magic and world building, and there is such a well-rounded plot that addresses more than just the basic synopsis I gave earlier. And I would honestly argue that the story is more about its side plot devices than the actual main story itself. One thing that Witch Hat Atelier does very well is address complicated topics, just like one main theme is what's really right versus wrong. Another huge theme is actually accessibility. This story is the accessibility Bible. Not really, but this is what I mean, because you could honestly argue that the plot is about accessibility. Since witches can't use magic on people directly anymore, they instead use magic on items, and they try to make people happy. But happy is a synonym for accessible in this case, because the world is insanely inaccessible, very much like our own, to those who are disabled. 70% of Volume 8 is about Coco and her friend Tarta working on an alternative to a seal chair for another boy who lost use of his legs in Volume 2. And that's just one part of the story. There are tons of other examples about accessibility, but I'll let you guys be surprised by the rest because they're awesome, and you really could not avoid them if you wanted to. And the story doesn't just address accessibility, but it does delve into some heavier topics as well, quite a few times. I was honestly shocked by this, but this is just one example because I did not expect them to address this, but they did address sexual assault and victim blaming. And the best part about this whole thing is they put a content warning before the chapter that all of it happens. There was a whole paragraph underneath one of the between chapter drawings warning you basically about what you were about to read in the next chapter. And to get even better, that entire chapter, if it is triggering to a reader, it's completely skippable. So you could skip that whole chapter and still understand exactly what's going on in the story. So you don't have to read it if you don't want to enjoy the whole story. And the way they handled it, it felt pretty real to me. I don't know. I felt like devastated. Man, it was rough. But they handled it very professionally, and I think in a way that was a service to people who have been through the same thing, and it was just very satisfying and handled in a very nice way. It wasn't really glamorized, nothing like that. I thought it was pretty decently handled, and it was a pretty surprising but nice touch. And so I really, really, really love the side things that the story addresses because of that. So, to save you from me going on and on and on about the story, let's go ahead and give it a rating and call it here. The story for me, it's a 5 out of 5 stars. It's well written, it's intelligent, and it's still creative despite following common themes and common plot devices, and I never got bored reading this thing. It was always fun to read and to see what was going on next. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the characters. And once again, starting with what I dislike, I don't really have a lot to complain about here either. My main complaint is the same as my main complaint when we talked about the plot in the story. This series does its characters justice. If I had to pick a complaint, I do wish that we got to see more of the brimmed caps. As far as villains go, they have a very clear motivation and purpose and are well written, but we never really get to know them personally in the first 9 volumes, so they kind of feel cartoonishly evil sometimes. In the first 9 volumes, we get to see 3 individual brimmed caps. The main orchestrator, the main big bad guy basically, who gave Coco the picture book in the very beginning, and then 2 other brimmed caps which fill side roles. I don't want to complain too much because the series is still new and has room to elaborate and expand on each villain, but we really don't learn anything about the villains personally, except for like one flashback that's only a few pages long for one of the throwaway side villains. So it would have been a little bit nice to know more about the villains so they don't take a backseat to the story. But I have a ton more positives for the other characters. The number one thing I love about the characters and this cast is it is insanely diverse. It's the most diverse cast of characters ever that I've ever seen in my many years of living, and it's not just racially diverse. Witch Hat Atelier is genius with its character designs and the roles that are assigned to each characters, and it's everything basically. We can go ahead and start with race since I brought it up already. So we're going to do a little bit of math, right? Within the first 9 volumes, we get introduced to a lot of characters. Of these, we have 6 obviously non-white characters and an additional 3 to 4 racially ambiguous characters that you could argue are non-white if you wanted to, and all of them play major or recurring roles. Every single one of these guys appears multiple times in this story and has some effect on the main story at any given point in the book, even if they seem to be nothing more than like filler fodder or a random side character, right? Just as an example, in the witching world, the 3 most powerful witches are called wises. They're called wise, and they are collectively referred to as the 3 wise. And one of these guys, one of the wise, is a black man, which is honestly kind of crazy to me because, you know, we're all used to white or white passing characters being in these powerful roles, so it was really nice to see. And we're gonna go ahead and name them all because I think they deserve some recognition because I love them so much. We've got Elira, a hot-ass, insanely powerful witch with a ton of sass and enough confidence, honestly, to fill the whole damn Hoover Dam. We've got Lagler, who is the wise in friendship that I mentioned before, and he is a cool and collected guy who outsmarts basically everyone and their stupid mind games that they like to play. There's Highheart, who is a sweet golden retriever boy, and he praises his apprentice all the freaking time over everything. And let's not forget his apprentice, Juji, who has to keep an eye on her mentor with the most optimistic outlook in the whole world and the best hair in the entire freaking series. Got Galga, the strong and stoic member of the Knights Morales, who seems to be the only male knight who knows how to interact with women like a normal person. There's Custis, who shows up initially as some random reckless kid and then comes back to have a main role a few volumes later. We also have the rugged old Rugio, best friend of Keyfree and second mentor to the main girls. We've also got Agate, one of Keyfree's ambitious apprentices, and she has so much, honestly too much, to prove to herself. And there's Uini, an unfortunate apprentice with social anxiety, but he does have the strength to overcome it. The last few I would argue are Asian, so I am going to include him, but, you know, feel free to make your own decisions. And the best part about these characters, right? They are all drawn the same way as all the white characters are drawn. No prominent lips, no stereotyped features. Never once are any of these guys made to be a visual gag. They are all done so fucking well. And I am so happy that we do not have any caricatures in this series at all. But, like I said, there's not only racial diversity, there is diversity in ability and age as well. In regard to ability, I'm going to say like half the characters in this freaking series are disabled or neurodivergent in some way. Keyfree, the main character basically, has a disability that I can't really go into because it's spoilers, but he is disabled. And the 3 wise that I mentioned before, the 3 most powerful witches in the world, right? The wise in teachings is paralyzed from the waist down and cannot walk at all. I mentioned Custis before, but he also can't walk due to an accident that happens when he's introduced. And on top of it, he also used to be homeless. Uini, who I also mentioned, has social anxiety and some trauma from verbal abuse from his shitty mentor, who I hate. Tarda, a good friend of Coco, has silver wash, which is basically this world's version of color blindness. So he cannot see color at all. Everything he sees is in black and white. Eteron and Echo are 2 twins in the Knights Morales, and they have ADHD or something. But the 2 of them, they cannot focus to save their freaking lives, and this is definitely not an exhaustive list either. As far as age goes, we have a pretty wide age range, seeing as how the main character is somewhere around 12 years old. Granted, none of their ages are officially revealed, but we can guess based on context clues. Keyfree and Olrugio are projected to be close to 30 or in their early 30s already. The wise in principles, which is basically fancy talk for the woman who runs the witch military, is so old she has visible wrinkles and gray hair, but she can still kick anyone's ass. There is a character literally of every single age in the series, and I think that's pretty damn fantastic, especially as someone who tends to appreciate the older folk now that I'm in my 20s myself. Aside from diversity, which is pretty much our main gold star here, all of the characters are well written and fleshed out. Each one of them has solid morals and principles, and they pretty much always stick to them, even if the decision they make is really annoying to have to read. Even the side characters have character and have arcs and backstories and are properly fleshed out. Not a single person was left out or forgotten in this series. Every single character was thought about thoroughly. So, the characters get a 5 out of 5 rating from me again, thanks to the insane diversity and well-writtenness. And honestly, my earlier dislike of a lack of brimmed cap content isn't really enough to bring the rating down, since it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary dislike. It didn't detract from the storytelling at all to not know these guys' backstories yet. This is just me wanting more information because I love this series to death. So let's go ahead and move on to art and production quality rating. So let's go ahead and talk about the art and production quality, and starting with what I didn't like, literally nothing. Literally nothing. There's not a single thing I disliked about the art and the quality. Nothing. A little nitpick, I guess. So I have something to say. Sometimes there are moments where the art doesn't really come through in the way that it was intended to be drawn. And I mostly mean that sometimes when characters are smiling, their teeth look like their lips, which catches me off guard when it's a black character this happens to. So it surprises me, and it takes me a second to realize, oh no, that's just the teeth. It's nothing weird. But that's a minor thing, and it's very clearly and obviously not intentional. Just me misseeing what I'm looking at, basically. As for what I did like, the art style, guys, fantastic. Every single page of this series has a tremendous amount of detail and care. It has a wonderful feeling of fantasy and magicalness that serves the story itself. And it is honestly no wonder that only 2 books get published every year, because I cannot imagine how long it must take to draw even just one panel. I am sure whole entire pages take weeks to do. The art is of such high quality, and Shirahama has such masterful control over her art and her writing. The art style was actually what drew me to this series in the first place, so I am beyond happy that it never once disappointed me. I also don't think I've ever encountered a single misprint, except for maybe some faint ink, if that counts. So the manga pretty much is always 100% of the time high quality. The pages and the cover are thick, very high quality paper, which is pretty nice in this day and age, considering how the quality of manga has deteriorated. I'm sure we've all noticed that. Witch Hat Atelier is actually my only Kodansha manga, so I have no idea if this is, what all Kodansha manga are like, but it sure as hell is better than Viz and Shonen Jump. I can tell you that much, no shade, but it's true. So, art and quality very obviously get a 5 out of 5 rating from me as well. As far as overall impression goes, before we get to the final rating, aside from things I mentioned before, I really don't have many issues or dislikes with this series. I said like 2 times before that it's the best thing I've read in my entire life, and I am seriously sticking by that. I will say though, it does take literally forever for new stuff to come out, so if you're looking for a series to binge or read quickly, or to get even frequent updates, you might want to pick up a different series in the meantime. Japanese volumes and chapters come out like 3 times a year at the most, but English translations, at least full volumes, are lucky to get published 2 times a year, so keep that in mind. There's also a spin-off series about cooking called Kitchen of Witch Hat that has yet to get any kind of translation, and there's 4 volumes out already, and I'm still waiting for that English translation. Kodansha, someone, literally anyone, if I have to do it myself, I will. Please, for the love of God, translate and publish it, because I need it in my life so bad. I need it right now. There are a few likes that I didn't mention before, and one is about the pacing of the story, because the pacing is literally perfect. I have absolutely no problems with the pacing at all. This might not be the story for you if you prefer things to move fast, because Witch Hat Atelier does take its time, but it doesn't drag. It's slow, doesn't drag, but it is slow. So you do keep that in mind if you don't really like something that moseys on across the plot chart, but I personally like it, since the slower you go, the more time you spend with the characters, and the more time you have to connect with them and the story, and it makes it all so much better. The story is mostly pretty serious, but there are plenty of breaks in chapters for humor, and it's pretty funny. Granted, I am pretty easy to please and will laugh at pretty much anything, but every single joke landed with me. I laughed so much while reading this, and Shirahama does a great job balancing the serious and sentimental with the big funny. Speaking of sentimental, I also cried a lot while reading this. I came very close to crying over something in every single volume, and I probably legit cried like 3 or 4 times over the story and what happens in the story. It is an emotional roller coaster, to say the least, and we aren't even at the crazy part of the series yet. I also mentioned that there was a little romance earlier, because Coco and Tarta do eventually spend enough time together where Tarta develops kind of a one-sided crush on Coco. But it is such a subtle plot device that you can easily ignore it if you don't care about it, which is great if you're like me and you hate romance. And it's also not played up for comedic effect, not seriously played up anyway, which I really appreciate because that's gotta be one of my least favorite romance tropes. I hate that so much. It's more of a minor inconvenience for Tarta, if anything, and it allows him to make some funny quips sometimes whenever he gets jealous, because he does get jealous. Honestly, it is really cute. I'm not gonna lie. It is really cute, and I did find myself rooting for the poor boy, even though the romance kind of comes and goes. Brush Buddy is also a thing. Brush Buddy is in this series, and this little guy makes everything so much better. I love this little fella. So, with all that being said, averaging out the 3 ratings I've already given, I think it's pretty clear and obvious that Witch Hat Atelier gets a 5 out of 5 stars. With its wonderful and innovative storytelling and the way it handles very complex issues, the vast diversity in its characters in every sense of the word, and with the amount of effort put into the beautiful art to make it as high quality as it is, I honestly think it deserves this high of a rating. Even the negative things I have to say about the series are just small complaints that honestly don't affect the story in any significant or real way. It is completely and entirely enjoyable as is, and it is doing everything right as far as I'm concerned. It is easily a must-read series, so go read it right now. I want more figures of Keyfree, and I need the anime to blow up, so you need to go read this and make it more popular. Go, go, go! As always, please do remember though that this is just my opinion, and I just read it once, pretty casually as a casual reader. And of course, because this series isn't finished yet, I will definitely update this review and give you more of my thoughts once more chapters of the series comes out, and maybe even once it finishes as well. If any of you guys have some differing opinions or other thoughts you'd like to share, please feel free to leave a comment. If you do, I ask that you please leave spoilers out of your comments or leave a spoiler warning if you absolutely have to mention them. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and listening today. I encourage you to take a look around the rest of the library and maybe head to the writing workshop for some writing tips, or head to the collector's corner for some silly collectible and figure videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to drop a follow on my Twitch as well to catch my game streams. I also have a Discord, which is linked in the description below. As always, thank you guys so much for the support, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye everyone!